Hey everybody, Gregor Arturo here. It has been a while since I really got an in-depth video put up on YouTube. I've been insanely busy since the solstice. I got this one video I put up about the sun and stars and how they work together in resonance systems. But I haven't really shared what's happened with me since then, and a lot of crazy things have happened since the solstice. And that this world is changing fast. It's changing really fast. And things are accelerating, and it's just this rapid fire moment after moment of learning experience and collaboration and co-creation, that all this is coming together, and that we've walked into this really powerful potential of reality. And so I want to share what's happened with me. And so a few days before the solstice, I left to go on a hitchhiking trip out west. And there's lots of mixed things going on energetically with me. It'd be like, should I go on this trip? I feel like I need to stay here in Ashland, but part of me is like, you need to go, Gregor. You need to move. You need to take off. And I've done it many times before, and sometimes I'm wondering if I'm just jumping the gun. And there was the notion of Patch Girl from Spirit Science, Tori. Hi, Tori, if you happen to see this. I went out to originally go see her, and that's not what happened. And that it definitely manifested completely differently. And so when I started the trip, the day before I was supposed to leave, I was finishing up orders for my mail working to send out. And I ran out of oxygen, so I went to Northern Tool Supply, got a tank of oxygen, came back. When I turned on the oxygen tank, I realized they sold me an empty tank. And at that point, the store had been closed for 15 minutes. And so the next day, I went first thing in the morning at 8 a.m., got a tank, came back. I was planning on finishing up orders that night, and so it ended up taking me a lot longer to get my orders done, not being able to finish them up that night, and so I was departing late. And so that day my friend gave me a ride west of Asheville to a truck stop for I-40. I was basically taking I-40 all the west, and my main goal was essentially Sedona, but I was open to anything. I was really hoping just to see Tori. And when I left, it was pretty much dark. It was almost sunset, and I got to the on-ramp. When I was at the on-ramp, I was only there for like 45 minutes before it was completely dark, and I was like, this is pointless. Hitchhiking in the dark, it doesn't work. It really doesn't. You can. I've gotten picked up in the dark. It's possible, but man, it's hard. It's really hard. You need to be in an extremely well-lit area if it's going to really work at all. And so I go to the truck stop, and at the truck stop, I start asking people if anyone's going west, because I was trying to catch Megabus, and Megabus does an overnight from Knoxville to Memphis, gets into Memphis at 6 a.m. And this is a tactic I do a lot of traveling, where I take an overnight bus and hitchhike during the day. And the overnight bus, there's a place to sleep. If you've gotten used to, sleeping on a bus, I've gotten pretty good at it. And then you can hitch during the day. And so by foot, you can move really fast across the country. And so I had the ticket already purchased, and I gotta get there by 11:30, and I'm at the truck stop, and I think like the second person I asked, he had pulled up, and he had a Tennessee license plate, and where I was like 40 minutes or so from the Tennessee border, and I asked him, he's like, hey, are you headed toward Knoxville? He's like, yeah, but I'm not going anywhere because I need gas money. I need like $40 to $50 gas together. I'm like, that's a lot of gas. He's like, I know, it's because my transmission won't go above third gear, or above second gear. And I was like, oh, well that's shitty. And he's been trying to get back to Knoxville from Charlotte. It's 3 days he's gone from Charlotte to there because of his transmission going out and costing him a lot of fuel. So that moment I thought about it. I was like, this feels right. This feels good. Alright, I'm going to give this guy like $40 gas and get to Knoxville and help him out. He'll help me out. This feels right. Throw him the offer, and he's like, awesome. And he's like, once we get over the hill into Tennessee, there's also going to be downhill, and we'll be able to get up to like 70, 75 in neutral. Otherwise, his car said he could only get up to 45. So we ended up spending a while at the truck stop, and while I was at the truck stop, we got to know each other and enjoyed a good meal, and he was a cool human being. And well, the other interesting thing is he had his truck. He had a pickup truck. The back of his pickup truck was just like Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and that the back of the truck was just full of most miscellaneous stuff. like every possible thing strapped down, bulked up into the air. I've never seen anything like it. He had everything. He kept offering me things from the back of his truck 'cause he had so much. He was trying to sell things to get back to Knoxville. So as I go in to like pay for the gas, this guy walks in. I was like, "Hey, are you guys in trouble? Do you need any help?" And I told him like, "Sir, what's up?" And that we're fine. And he's like, "Oh, I'm going west, an hour outside of Memphis, if you want to ride." And the way he offered it, it's more likely he's offering it for free. And I could have gone a ride all the way to Memphis. I was like, shit. Even though I had the bus ticket almost to Memphis. And I was like, no, I think I'm going to stay with this guy and help him out. He's like, awesome. He's like, that's the way of the road, to help each other out. And it was really powerful what he said in that moment. I've never had someone actually say that to me in terms of like fully acknowledging the way, in terms of the road and travel works energetically, and he did right there and then. And he leaves, and I go and fill up the gas tank, and he starts pumping it. And I ask him, like, hey, can I pump it? And he's like, huh? And I'm like, I'm a Reiki healer. I'm not sure if that makes any sense, but if you let me pump it, I promise you I'll get you better gas mileage. And I've done this a bunch traveling with not doing Reiki and doing Reiki, and that's basically me using my energetic skills with my hands on the pump, which some people will be like, what? But I'm creating a field in between my hands that's actually energetically stimulating, increasing the kinetic motion of the fuel as it goes in, so it combusts better. And so this is one thing I've experienced, like fire dancing, and that when I fire danced on the solstice before, and the full moon, your fire burns longer. It burns a little bit more intense. And I don't know what the science fully is behind this, in terms of science has verified this, but from personal experience, I've had flammable materials act slightly differently than usual. I've worked with a lot of flammable materials. And this is one thing we're doing here in Oregon. Oops. Yeah, we're going to jump to Oregon in a little bit. I think I mentioned that in my last video. Actually, I ended up in Oregon. And I think a lot of people on Facebook know I've ended up in Oregon. Anyways, we get into the... So I end up, putting gas in his car, and we end up going on the highway. And we're going like uphill, and we're barely going 35, and I realized we'd been talking so long that by the time we left, I don't necessarily have enough time to make my bus, but it was close. And so I'm just like, we're gonna make it, we're gonna make it. We still have this whole downhill stretch, and well, that downhill stretch was as long as he said it was. Really wasn't. And so I started to get worried once we were in Tennessee. And when we got to a part of I-40 where it's sort of a right angle, he knew you could get off I-40 and take a shortcut through. And usually it's not quicker, but being we can't go over 45, it's actually quicker to go this way. And so there's a point where we're about to get back onto I-40, and I look at the GPS, and the GPS says 30 minutes from the bus stop in Knoxville, 30 miles from the bus stop, and it was 30 minutes to my bus departing. And it's just like 30, 30, 30. And however, that's if the GPS was, going 60 miles per hour. And we definitely weren't going 60 miles per hour. And so like this energy sort of comes over me like, I'm gonna miss my bus. I'm not gonna make my bus. This is bad. I'm gonna be stuck in Knoxville at like 11:30 at night. This sucks. And I sort of like experience this energy for a second of like failure and despair. And all of a sudden we get onto the on-ramp, and he starts going. I look down at the speedometer. It says 60. I'm like, what? 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 And he just keeps going. I'm like, hey, you're going like 60 miles per. You're in third gear. He's like, no shit. This is like a very southern hick type of character, and he's just like, awesome. He's like, Ford fucking rocks. And we just keep going up. We go up to like 70 miles per hour on the highway in third gear. And I'm like, man, keep going. Just keep going. Do not stop. Just keep going. Because at that point, as if we could go at least 60, we're going to make it to the bus. And well, when I sort of like, when we're getting a little bit closer, I realize we have about like, I'm going to be about 4 minutes late to the bus. And I sort of like this moment, I was just like praying to the universe and like visualizing this bus is going to be late. I see it being late, and that I'm going to make it onto this bus. And I got onto that bus. It was 8 minutes late from departing, and I made it to Memphis. And so the whole thing I'm conveying right here is this is how the beginning of my experience going to the solstice trip ended up. And that there's all these little patterns at play in terms of like the oxygen tank being empty and delaying me, and because it delayed me I got put in this situation, and to where I had this free will where I could have let go of this, kept my money and gone with this other guy, avoid that whole situation, avoid all that stress, but it came down to that moment of being on the on-ramp and being in a state of awe and seeing a miracle in that somehow the third gear, the teeth, might have been stripped, but there might have been one tooth left. I don't know. Something made it grip and snap into third gear, and he maintained third gear. And it just didn't make sense to my mechanical mind. But I had to put faith in it. And the irony is, the man asked me when I talked about, doing Reiki on his gas. He says, "Oh, can you do that on my transmission?" I'm like, "Nah, that's not going to work." And that's me not believing in myself in terms of how powerful we are at manipulating some things. There's some weird things about machines, and I work with machines, and how they sometimes just work when you put faith in them. I've seen people do interesting things with Reiki, and that we just can't get this car to work, and the lady's just like, "I'm just going to do Reiki on it for a moment, just like give it love." And 5 minutes later, the car's up and running, and be like, can't explain that, it just happens. And so that sort of set the tone for this trip. And once I realized I was into this trip, I was like, no, there's something really big with me going on this trip, really big. And it's about this like Tesla tower, and it's about the work I'm doing, and like this is the real reason I'm leaving. As much as I love Tori and would love to see her, this was really coming to the surface. And I ended up meeting some people in Memphis, because I hitched out of Memphis that morning to West Memphis on the other side of the Mississippi in Arkansas, but I spent the entire day at a truck stop. Never spent an entire day at a truck stop hitchhiking. Truck stops are the best place to hitch out of. Couldn't get out. I was like stuck there. And I had this moment where, like, you could say a voice, or the universe told me, "You're looking for a red van, a very specific red van." And I ended up finding a man with a very specific red van at the truck stop. I asked him, and he wasn't going anywhere. And he was sort of sleeping in his van at the truck stop that night. But I ended up having a phenomenal experience talking to him, in that the universe is like, "I'm not necessarily going to send you where you want to go, but there's a specific way that might be most interesting and dynamic if you go." And so I ended up going back into Memphis and hanging out with a couple friends, and then taking an overnight bus to Fort Worth. And in Fort Worth, I saw a friend and who owns an oil company, and had a remarkable time in talking to him, and how he's been wanting to move towards sustainable energies. He's been trying, and it's been really hard. And that some of the sustainable energies financially aren't necessarily sustainable in this current economy. And then from there, Tori got me a standby ticket to Salt Lake City on the 20th. And I spent like the day in the airport, and all the tickets booked up, and wasn't getting out. And so I ended up taking I was like, I'm not spending the solstice in Fort Worth, Texas. And so I got on a bus and took it to, there's a overnight bus from Fort Worth to El Paso. I got into El Paso that morning, and just after sunrise, and I spent 5 hours trying to hitch out of El Paso. It was extremely hard. However, I forgot that Texas is one of the only states in the United States you actually go on the interstate and hitchhike. Once I got on the interstate, I got picked up in like half an hour. And it was just so taboo to walk on the side of the interstate and just be like, "Man, I can hitch here? This is a little weird." And I got a ride to Deming, New Mexico. And that was it. I didn't get past Deming, New Mexico that day, and that was it. And I was stuck there for the solstice. And that day I got accused by a store owner of stealing something and dealt with a cop, but felt very empowered that day because I hadn't done anything, and got to a point where I was just like, he wanted to search my stuff, and I was like, no, I'm gonna go, because I was eating in a diner connected to the store next to it, and I just sat down to my meal, like took a bite, and I got pulled away by a cop. And I'm like, I'm gonna go sit back down and finish my meal, have a nice day. And the cop was sort of dumbfounded. And after like 5 minutes had gone by, he came back and apologized to me, and shook my hand and asked me if how are my journeys and everything, and then let me be. And so it's always that notion of switching it to where, like, hey, I'm the victim here, and I want to be enjoying my meal, and I'm getting harassed, and feeling very empowered standing up to authority. And so it's like symbolically for the solstice, that's big for me. However, that night, I went and camped out at the truck stop out in like I don't know what you call that type of desert, but it's a type of desert in New Mexico, in southern New Mexico, at 4,500 feet. And it was cold that night, got below 20, and it was the coldest I've ever experienced camping out in my life. I was like shivering in my blanket type of cold. Not blanket, I had a goose down sleeping bag, but I had lost some goose down feathers. There was like some cold, spots in it, and it just didn't keep me warm. And so I woke up like before sunrise, like I need to go back into like the truck stop and like warm up, and like got a meal, and went back out under the on-ramp. And I realized like while walking into the truck stop that I was like, man, this is the solstice. I've been like thinking about this for years. It's just been like, December 21st, and what's this mean to me right now? I'm experiencing it. It's not like where everyone's built up in their heads and thought about, and just realizing how the simple notion of me sleeping at night and being so cold, so unbelievably cold. And the solstice is supposed to be like the darkest day of the year, when it's supposed to be the darkest solstice of our times. And the metaphor realizing to me in that very moment is that it can only get warmer from here. And man, has it gotten warmer. It's gotten a lot warmer. I can really feel it in my heart. And so I went out to the on-ramp that day, and fifth car that went by picked me up. We're going all the way to Phoenix. Got all the way to Phoenix, like, I don't know how far away that is. And I go to take a bus to northern Phoenix, and a public bus, and I get off in an on-ramp, and I'm at the on-ramp for 15 minutes, and this beautiful mother and daughter pick me up in their Mustang, and they're going all the way to Sedona, and I get a ride all the way to Sedona that day, less than 20 minutes of waiting by the side of the road, where I'd been spending the whole day on the other 2 days trying to get a ride. And 444 miles that day, I made it to Sedona in under 20 minutes. And I got to see my good friend Walker. And it's really interesting how everything manifested. And I could keep going on about this journey and what happened in Sedona. And it was crazy synchronicity. I met this girl, Megan. Hi, Megan, if you happen to see this. Megan and I are exactly 2 days apart. And we ended up hanging out on New Year's and climbed near, I think it's Thunderbolt Mountain, Thunder Mountain, in Sedona, and climbed up part of it till like 4 in the morning, and everything's like glistening white off in the moon, and it was just beautiful. And after Sedona, I hitched back down to Phoenix, and actually no, I got a ride with a friend going to Phoenix, and when I was down in Phoenix, I stayed with Elizabeth Rauscher. You might have seen her from the movie Thrive. She's the one who helped Nassim Haramein write his papers. She's a physicist from Stanford. Wonderful, wonderful lady. Elizabeth is so grand, wonderful heart, so intelligent. I really enjoyed spending some time with her, and went hiking the Superstition Mountains for like a night that was also really cold and windy. And then after that, I manifested a ride all the way to Ashland, Oregon on Craigslist, and that's where I am now. And the irony is like an hour after getting this ride, I got an email from my roommate in Asheville, who originally found me over YouTube a long time ago, and bless her heart, she wrote me an email that she'd moved all my stuff out of my bedroom and down into her basement so her son could move in. But I hadn't paid the full rent. This was a few days past New Year's. But we had communicated, and I was getting it to her the rest of that week, and which I ended up getting that money, but didn't have to pay it for her because she actually refunded my money. But it's all communication, miscommunications, and misunderstandings, which is the ongoing problem with the majority of things I see in society and myself, and reflections and interactions of all humans is how we communicate and relate to each other. And so clear agreements are really important. And so now I'm in Ashland. I'm coming up to a point with having a very clear agreement of where I am going to have a salary paid position, R&D, doing what I love with a beautiful team in a beautiful space. It's friggin' phenomenal what we're doing. Absolutely in love with it. I'm still learning at what my boundary is in terms of how I can communicate what we're doing, for obvious reasons, and there's non-disclosures, and we're playing in the big leagues basically, and is gonna have to tone down a little bit on my communicating of some of the science. Well, no. So here's the thing. The thing is, everyone I work with is all open source. We're all open source. But the thing is, basically gave a bunch of hippies a bunch of money, and so we gotta play it professional and do the whole capitalism ball game. And that this is the current paradigm we're in, and so we gotta work with the paradigm to move into a new paradigm. That's one thing I don't think Tesla fully understood, and so it requires me to get very creative in terms of how I'm saying teaching science. I can teach science, I can teach physics, and teach understandings of vibrations and mathematics, but the actual technology I can't necessarily get as an in-depth in. And I can teach the mechanisms, and this is the same technique that some of the other people have been doing who can't necessarily talk at liberty about everything they're doing. Like Nassim. There's a lot of things I know Nassim is doing that I'm not at liberty to tell you about, including myself, and that we're associated with him now with the work we're doing. But Nassim's still really good at communicating the information and the science, but he's not necessarily communicating the devices and the technology in depth. And so that's where I'm having to move into, is I can engage and talk more about the mechanisms until the patents go through. And we have to play the patent game now. It's absolute bullshit, but we have to play it. And so in 2 weeks, the U.S. Patent Office is changing how they approach patents. And so basically, who's ever the first with the invention to the patent office gets the patent. It doesn't matter if I show you guys, like right now on YouTube, okay, say, any of my crazy toroidal coil inventions, anything I show you on YouTube, and say I'm the one who came up with this idea and put it into fabrication and manifestation, but someone else went and patented it right now. So, hint, hint, if you want to go screw me over, go for it. In patenting it, none of the evidence from unless they patent it right now, but after 2 weeks, if you patent it and you beat me to the patent office, it's yours. And so the property rights thing is getting really ridiculous in this paradigm and in this reality. And so evidence of saying, taking the blueprint, putting it in the post in a letter and mailing it to yourself and not opening it, that used to be some form of legitimate like copyright and patent protection. Very minimal, but it can be used in court. 2 weeks, it will no longer stand up in court. Nothing will, except for who gets to the patent office first. And so it makes the whole non-disclosure process more intense, and they're pushing us into this secrecy. And so, but we can still get a patent, we can still declare that it's open source once it's patented. And so that's the main goal we're going at, is it's a race to the patent office, because there's a lot of people in this field. But when you have that patent, you have the power behind it, and you are able to license it, or you're able to give it away for free. And so there's lots of different projects we're working on, lots of different things we're getting involved in, and really moving into a new understanding of physics and how it interweaves with consciousness, and getting to real understandings of electricity and magnetism and gravity, and how Newtonian physics does play into it strongly, and really understanding fundamental dynamics of kinetics and fluid mechanics, and that there is something very cohesive and simple in understanding all this to create a working system. And so I'm going to start talking about some of the mechanisms I've been exploring and understanding in physics to what we're going to be putting into these technologies, not necessarily going in depth to how these technologies work, but explaining the fundamental mechanisms to understanding where we're going here and here at the exact same time. And so there's some powerful fundamental things happening on this planet right now, and that we're all participating in, and really finding where you fit in to this process and to this puzzle, because the potential we're walking into is one of extreme power and beauty. What I mean by power is our power of free will, taking back this planet and pulling away the food of fear that's been feeding the powers that be. That power is dwindling right now. And so it's good. All really good. But I'm working with Thrival Tech in Ashland, Oregon, and I am very honored and pleased to be working side by side with some very phenomenal human beings of all different shapes and varieties and skills and shapes. Where I said shapes, because I just have a geometrical mind and we all are all different shapes, but people could take that the wrong way. And so it's blessed right now where I feel like Daniel from Stargate. I had a moment where I gave a presentation to everyone on the team like a month ago, and I walked out of it, and I said to my friend, I was like, man, I feel just like Daniel from Stargate. And I was like all scatterbrained, and I felt like I was giving a presentation to all these generals. And I walk into a house we have next door to the workshop, where another friend is hanging in there, and she says to me, you know, Gregor, you remind me just like Daniel of Stargate, for a completely different reason, entirely other different reason. And yeah, that's sort of who I feel like right now is Daniel from Stargate, and sort of showing up, you know, with the ring and how it fits into all these different things. But working a lot more with car technologies and how to improve cars and using GEAT systems and HHO. And we're just moving into a high voltage phase and playing with electricity. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm the guy who is in charge of the high voltage test bench, so I'm pretty excited about that, and getting into really high voltage, millions of volts, just like Tesla. Oh, it's going to be exciting. And so I think I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to be putting out a couple more videos this week. There's a lot of things I want to share. I've been meaning to make this video. I just want to like really talk about like the whole miracle, seeing the second go into third gear and being like, what? Or like, really, is this happening right now? This is setting the tone for like the solstice and everything we're going into, and really learning what I learned on the solstice and setting the tone for my energy moving the cycle is humility, and really experiencing humility. And you might have seen my whole process, for some of you who have watched my YouTube channel for a long time, this process of humility that's been coming into my life and really understanding it. And so thank you for all who are listened, and I will hopefully show some more beautiful science to you very, very soon. Adios.